Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first ever Canton Coders Code Interview. My name is James Simon. I am interviewing Guy Royse, who is a developer advocate or a evangelist.
My official title actually is a developer advocate.
Okay.
In previous companies, I've also been a developer evangelist.
So evangelist, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Came from Microsoft.
And so an evangelist is, to use theological terms, is someone who spreads the good news. And so they were using that as a metaphor to describe spreading the good news of Microsoft products.
Sure.
And
sure.
and technologies and tech stacks and stuff like that. And it's actually a really good word for it if you look at the. I'm going to get into a little bit of word geekery here, but it comes from which means good in Greek, like euphonic or euphoria, meaning sounds good or feels good. And like angelion or something like that. I can't remember, but that means messenger or message. So it actually literally means good message.
Good message. Okay.
Yeah. So it's like, hey, I'm going to tell you the good news about.
So speaking of then, if you are a developer advocate or an evangelist, like what really is that job? What do you do, and why do I, as a developer, care about it?
So the last bit's actually the most interesting part of that question, but I'll talk about what I do first, and sort of the nuts and bolts of it. And so the reality of it is I do a lot of different kinds of things. Some of it is I participate in community events. I'll go speak at a conference about a technical topic, and if I can and if it's appropriate, highlight the company's product in there, but not necessarily not trying to sell it. It's just, hey, I'm doing a talk on graph databases, for example, and hey, my company's got this graph product that I'm going to use for all my demos. But there's valuable, meaty content there as well. And so you learn something useful, and you learn that, hey, there's a tool that does this. And so part of it's going out of these communities, and that extends to virtual communities. So both online conferences, given that we're in a pandemic right now, but also communities like dev.to or Stack Overflow. You participate in those sorts of things. I don't tend to do a lot of either of those necessarily, but there's lots of ways that you can go out into communities and just kind of serve them, honestly. The other thing that I do is more content creation oriented. So I'll be doing blog posts, I'll be doing sample code, building cool demo applications that use my company's product, stuff like that. And then just a little bit of general support for the company. So I'll do trainings and workshops and stuff like that as well. And so it's a little bit of everything. And it's got a nice mix of creativity. So, I'm building slide decks, but then I'm writing code. And I get to hop around from a lot of different types of tasks. And so it's real suitable if you have attention span challenges.
Yeah, I definitely suffer from that too. So then so why do I, as a developer, what makes me happy about meeting Guy if I'm working with your company's product or a product like it?
So if you're interested in the company's product, or you're using it, and then I have information where it's like I can help you go deeper, for example, and you can come to a talk and learn more about it, or just converse about it, or realize that there's other aspects to the product that you didn't realize, and so I can highlight those. And so as a developer, probably the most direct benefit a developer gets from coming and watching a developer evangelist give a talk, or watching a YouTube video or something they've done, is just a knowledge transfer. So I've got stuff that I know and that I've learned, or that I'm learning, and I share that. I go out and share it. A lot of my job is really just sharing, and so I can share that, and then you can benefit from that knowledge as well. And so I think that's the main value that your average developer, is there an average developer, but that a developer and engineer would get out of the work a developer advocate does.
Right. So then, if you obviously you have to be a pretty deep subject matter expert. You said you write code. Are you doing that to enhance the product, or like reference projects to learn?
It's more reference products. I have yet to work as a developer advocate or a developer evangelist at any company that has actually given me access to production code. So, um, yeah. So, no, I suppose, I mean, I work for Redis Labs, and so I suppose I could send a pull request to Redis since it's an open source project, but I haven't. It's more of using it in interesting ways.
Interesting. So then, obviously, Redis, you said, you and I had this conversation about how you're working on, like, you're using Graph, right?
Yeah.
And doing GraphQL stuff. How do you, I guess, where do you find the ideas for your reference projects? Is it from problems customers have had, or just your own experience of ways that you've implemented things with something else that you think you can do better with Redis?
For me, a lot of times it's about the how. Like, I want to learn how a thing works and how to use a thing, kind of for its own sake. A lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
and so, like, we were talking about Graph Database the other day, you and I, and Graph databases, and they're just interesting in and of themselves. Now, they solve interesting problems too, um, but I'll dive into them because I find them interesting more than anything, and I will tend to build code around them to highlight how they work so that I can educate how to use a graph database. And then, I'll tack on some, hey, here's some use cases you might want to consider using this for, but I've given you the basics on how to get up and running with a graph database. So my inspiration lots of times is a little bit of, this tech is cool. I mean, sometimes it's the, hey, we really want you to talk about this thing, as in my company, says, hey, could you talk about this thing? It's like, yeah, sure, okay, I can do that. And it helps that it's cool, right? Some of
Yeah.
the inspiration, though, is just comes from, well, straight up. I'm looking back at my shelf full of Dungeons and Dragons books, and and so lots of times I just pull inspiration on the things that I enjoy, and I'll take the things from the technology and the things that I enjoy, and blend them together to make something fun. And so
Sure.
create some, it's like I'm teaching, but I'm also entertaining at the same time. And so that's something I personally strive to do. You don't have to do that as a developer advocate or a developer evangelist. It's just something that I enjoy doing. It's the way I like to work. I think other advocates do different things, but anything that I can do to get people to actually engage with the thing that I build, I feel makes it more valuable, and the learning happens more that way.
Right. So now, obviously, you're kind of an external, or what I would think of as an external evangelist. You're not evangelizing Redis to Redis, right? So
Yeah.
have you been before in a position where you were an internal advocate for a certain process or set of tools?
Not in exactly that sense. There is an aspect of developer advocacy where part of my job is to advocate for the developers who use our product. And so, whoa, sorry, there's a big spider on my desk. Yeah. So it's kind of like Tron, right? I fight for the users, but you go out and you gather feedback from the people who use your product, in this case Redis, and bring that feedback back to the product team so that they can incorporate that in the product. Say no, and advocate for positions that the developers care about, because the company cares about one thing, and the developers who use the software care about one thing, but then there's also the vice presidents who buy the software and they care about a slightly different thing. Right. And so part of that is to be a voice for the developer.
No, that's great. I just asked because we're kind of in a place where we have some internal advocacy going on for certain things for developers, more autonomy, more flow, right?
Yeah.
And so I know that those roles are out there. We have a couple people that do it, but it seems very challenging, right? And I'd imagine even externally, and especially externally, we're coming in and saying, hey, I'm out there talking to people every day, and they want to see more of this, right?
Yeah.
And trying to get that high enough on the priority list, right? That it keeps you credible, right? I'd imagine that some of the credibility comes from that, from users learning from you and then giving you feedback and seeing it rolled into the product, right?
In fact, if there is a distinction between the title developer evangelist and developer advocate, they're part of a continuum of you need to do all these things, but the evangelist is more of the cheerleader. It's the go out and send the message, and the
Right.
advocate is more bring the message back. And so there's like it's the evangelism is pointing outward, and the advocacy is pointing inward. But those are both part of the job. So
Sure. Yeah, but I suppose
sometimes
there's a way
neither
to.
title is adequate, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, but there's a way where we're in. Maybe advocates more. I don't know. I can see why it's more in tune today,
Yeah,
right? Because there is a movement to do things like the team that I work with is trying to do to make developers' lives easier.
yeah.
Whether it's just with your own little, your own product, or with a process or something within your own company. That's pretty fantastic. That's pretty amazing.
It's a fantastic job.